It's not hard to figure out the symbolism if you dream of a ladder or a staircase. The common interpretation is that it represents ascending to a higher plane, either materially or spiritually. Up is good and down is bad, right? Heaven is up and hell is down. You can be living in the basement or the penthouse. Hard work or good luck, being in the right place at the right time, can send you soaring. Bad luck, whether you work hard or not, can send you plummeting to the bottom. This basic assumption is clearly illustrated in the game of chutes and ladders, also known as snakes and ladders. Depending on a roll of the dice, you could end up at the foot of a ladder and zip up several rows closer to the winning square at the top of the board, or you could end up at the mouth of a chute or snake and lose several rows of progress. Chutes and Ladders is based on an older and more culturally interesting game, Moksha Patam, invented in India in the 13th century. The game symbolizes the journey through life, and the goal is to reach perfection, or nirvana, the highest level attainable by a human being. The snakes on the board, which send you back to the bottom, are labeled with the names of Hindu demons and legendary evil people, each with an associated vice printed in parentheses next to their names: lust, power, cruelty, greed, ambition, laziness, jealousy, overconfidence, anger, pride, vengefulness, arrogance, and wickedness. The ladders aren't named after supernatural beings, but each is assigned a particular virtue, such as honesty, concentration, hard work, courtesy, helpfulness, determination, dedication, compassion, wisdom, and contentment. Traditionally, Moksha Patam is played to pass the time during a night of religious observance and fasting until dawn, when the fast is broken. Progress in the game of Moksha Patam and its Western counterpart, Chutes and Ladders, is made entirely by chance. There's no way to earn or cultivate the virtues that accelerate your path towards nirvana or the game-winning square. It's all in the luck of the dice. Sailing ahead or slipping behind for no reason is okay in a game, but most of us are unsettled when our lives are that random. Life feels predictable and fair when virtue is rewarded and vice is punished. But we know it doesn't always work that way. There's a word for the struggle to understand why God allows bad things to happen to good people, theodicy. Whole books have been written on the subject. Today's lesson from Genesis actually poses a different question. Actually, the opposite question. Why does God let good things happen to bad people? When we catch up with Jacob in a certain place after the setting of the sun, he's not on his way from Beersheba, from Haran, on a religious pilgrimage. He's not a righteous man fleeing evildoers. Jacob is on the run from his own brother, Esau, because he has stolen Esau's birthright blessing. His mother, Rebekah, who talked him into deceiving his father and stealing the blessing in the first place, tells him to escape his brother's wrath by fleeing to Haran to stay with his uncle Laban. Jacob is basically on the lam. When the twins were still in her womb, God told Rebekah that her firstborn, Esau, would serve her secondborn, Jacob. But now Jacob, unwilling to wait and to trust in God's promises, is alone, exhausted, with nothing but a rock for a pillow. What fear and guilt-induced dreams will plague him in the night? Astonishingly, Jacob isn't haunted by visions of Esau's revenge and God's disapproval. He sees a ladder reaching up to heaven, a ladder full of angels processing up and down. God speaks directly to Jacob in his dream, saying, I am the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and your offspring. Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. God is essentially making the same promise to Jacob that he made to Abraham, naming Jacob in the line of patriarchs with Abraham and Isaac. Jacob is awestruck. God is here, he realizes, in this desolate place, in the midst of my guilt and fear. R. Kent Hughes writes in Genesis, Beginning and Blessing, Jacob, the conniving believer who was outcast and alone due to his own sin, who merited nothing from God, was met by God in his misery with an unparalleled revelation of God's care and assurance for the future. Jacob was not seeking God. He was fleeing the consequences of his deception. He was not expecting grace, but grace was unleashed upon his soul. And with not even a word of reproach, the vision and the voice of God bore only assurances. How, according to anyone's definition of acceptable behavior, could Jacob possibly deserve God's grace after what he had done? The good news is, grace isn't deserved or earned. God's grace extends to all, the just and the unjust, the upstanding and the backsliding, the saints and the sinners. This is particularly good news for those who judge themselves or others to be unworthy of God's grace. We can imagine ourselves or others out of God's good graces. We can refuse to believe we're loved no matter what. Refuse to accept that we're accepted, as Paul Tillich put it. But that does not change the equation. We can choose to live in the knowledge that all are worthy, that God's grace, love, mercy, and forgiveness extend to all. And that changes everything. When he was 19 years old, Brian Cushing was one of 6 teenagers out for a night of joyriding and crime. They were apprehended, and the 5 others pled guilty to various acts like forgery and larceny. But Ryan, who was charged with assault for throwing a turkey through a car windshield and nearly killing the driver, could have faced 25 years in prison. Victoria Rivolo, age 44, suffered severe injuries and needed many hours of surgery to rebuild her shattered facial bones. When Ryan left the courtroom after pleading guilty, he came face to face with his victim for the first time. He said he was sorry and begged her to forgive him. And she did. She cradled his head as he sobbed. She stroked his face and patted his back. "It's okay. It's okay," she said. "I just want you to make your life the best it can be." The prosecutor had been ready to seek harsh punishment for a crime he rightly denounced as heedless and brutal. At Victoria's insistence, prosecutors granted Ryan a plea bargain instead, 6 months in jail and 5 years probation. Given the opportunity for retribution, Victoria gave and got something better: the dissipation of anger and the restoration of hope, in a gesture as cleansing as the tears washing down her damaged face and the face of the foolish, miserable boy whose life she single-handedly restored. Most of us don't have stories of grace or redemption quite that dramatic, but we all have experienced grace and have had opportunities to extend grace to others. God's grace restores us, and it gives us a pathway for living in a world of grace, mercy, love, and forgiveness. We're never going to be able to completely stop missing the mark. We're never going to be able to completely avoid giving into our worst impulses or inadvertently wounding one another. So, if we want to live in a world of grace, mercy, love, and forgiveness, our only choice is to be more gracious, merciful, loving, and forgiving towards ourselves and towards others when they miss the mark, give in to their worst impulses, or inadvertently wound us. There might not be a ladder to nirvana or a stairway to heaven, but a ladder can be a symbol of something else besides ascending or accumulating or achieving. It can be a sign of connection. Amen.